Iran just fired missiles at a $20 billion U.S. aircraft carrier. Read that again. Not a patrol boat, not a supply ship. A full American aircraft carrier carrying 5,000 U.S. soldiers, 60 to 70 aircraft, and enough firepower to level a small country just got targeted by Iranian missiles in open water. And the carrier didn't fight back, it ran. A United States Navy aircraft carrier, the single most powerful symbol of American military dominance on Earth, turned around and fled the scene after Iran launched on it from 340 kilometers away. Let that image sit in your brain for a second. Because what just happened isn't just a military event, it's a psychological earthquake. It's the moment the entire world, every ally, every enemy, every neutral country sitting on the fence, watched America blink. And here's the part that should terrify every single person watching this. Iran didn't even use its best weapon. Military analysts reviewing the strike pattern are saying Iran fired a warning shot, a calibrated, deliberate hold-back shot, specifically designed to scare the carrier away without sinking it. Iran was essentially saying, we could have ended this entire fleet. We chose not to. Today. Because here's what Iran actually has sitting in its arsenal right now: hypersonic missiles, weapons that travel at over 6,000 kilometers per hour, weapons that no existing naval defense system on Earth, including everything on that carrier, can reliably intercept. One hypersonic missile hitting that ship doesn't damage it, it sinks it. 5,000 American soldiers go into the water. And Donald Trump, sitting in the White House, now has to make the most dangerous decision any American president has faced since the Cuban Missile Crisis. That scenario hasn't happened yet. But Iran just proved it can happen. Anytime it chooses. This is what a real power shift looks like. Not an announcement, not a press conference. A $20 billion warship running at full speed away from a country that the United States has been sanctioning, threatening, and bombing for over 40 years. Now let's talk about what this moment actually means. Because the mainstream coverage is already trying to minimize it, spin it, and bury it under talking points. And the real story is so much bigger than what's making headlines. First, understand the geography of what just happened. This carrier wasn't on a peacetime patrol. It was positioned, loaded, and moving toward the Gulf with one purpose: to project threat against Iran. It had destroyer escorts. It had air cover. It represented the full weight of American naval power in the region, and Iran tagged it from 340 kilometers away and told it to leave. The message to every country watching wasn't subtle. It was, American power projection in this region is no longer safe. Second, understand the technology gap that just got exposed publicly for the first time. America's missile defense systems were built for a different era. The interceptors cost between $1 million and $3 million each. Iran's attack drones cost as little as $20,000 to produce. Iran has thousands of them. Do that math. America is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to intercept weapons that cost pocket change to manufacture. It's an economic war of attrition that the United States literally cannot afford to win. And Iran knows this. Iran has been engineering specifically for this asymmetry for years. Third, and this is the piece that Wall Street is quietly melting down over right now, the oil market just entered completely uncharted territory. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just important. It is the single most critical choke point in the entire global energy system. Roughly 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day. Saudi Arabia's exports go through it. UAE's exports go through it. Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar. Everything goes through that narrow strip of water. And right now, Iran has demonstrated that it can hit American naval assets protecting that strait from over 300 kilometers away. Insurance companies are already repricing risk for every tanker in the region. Some are refusing coverage entirely. Captains are anchoring outside the strait and waiting. And the global oil market, which was already tense, is now pricing in something it has never had to price before: the genuine possibility that America cannot protect the world's oil supply. That's not a talking point. That's what the futures market is saying with real money, right now, today. And here's the thing nobody is telling you about what happens next. Because what Iran does in the next 72 hours isn't the real danger. The real danger is what Israel is pushing America to do. There's a nuclear option on the table right now, not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. An actual, documented military contingency plan, and it has a name: the Samson option. Israel's most extreme strategic doctrine states this clearly. If Israel faces an existential threat, it cannot survive conventionally. It reserves the right to use nuclear weapons, not just to defend itself, but to ensure that anyone destroying Israel gets destroyed with it. Mutual annihilation is a last resort. Take everyone down on the way out. Israel currently has an estimated 90 nuclear warheads. Nobody officially confirms this number because Israel maintains a policy of nuclear ambiguity. They never confirm, never deny. But intelligence agencies across the world treat it as established fact. And right now, Israeli officials are pressuring Washington to consider strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, not conventional strikes. The conversation in closed-door briefings is about whether America would authorize or support something far more catastrophic if conventional warfare fails to stop Iran. This is not fringe speculation. This was reported before this latest escalation. And after Iran just chased a U.S. carrier out of the Gulf, the pressure on Washington just intensified dramatically. Think about what that pressure looks like from Trump's position. He already told the world he would decide who Iran's next supreme leader is. He said it publicly, on the record, with zero diplomatic framing, as if regime change in a country of 90 million people is a scheduling decision he makes between golf and dinner. The Iranian response to that statement was an outrage. It was a missile at an aircraft carrier, because Iran understood exactly what that statement meant. It meant America is no longer pretending this is about regional stability or nuclear compliance. It's about regime elimination. And when a country believes its government is the target, not just its military, restraint disappears. That's the psychological tripwire that just got stepped on. Now let's talk about the human cost of this conflict. Because behind every geopolitical number is a person whose life just collapsed. There are millions of Pakistani workers in the Gulf right now, millions of Indians, Bangladeshis, Filipinos, Africans, regular working people who went to the Gulf because their home economies couldn't provide what they needed. They work construction, hospitality, logistics, domestic work. They send money home every month. Entire families back home depend on that wire transfer arriving on the first of the month. Dubai was never supposed to be a war zone. Abu Dhabi was never supposed to have air raid anxiety. Doha, the city that hosted the World Cup 2 years ago, the city of luxury malls and gleaming towers, is now a city where people are watching the sky. Nobody who went to work in the Gulf signed up for this. Nobody got a risk briefing that said, by the way, there's a possibility American military bases near your job site might become missile targets. These are ordinary people trapped in an extraordinary catastrophe that was manufactured entirely by decisions made in Washington and Tel Aviv. And the people making those decisions, they're not in the Gulf. They're not in the shelters. They're not getting the 2 a.m. emergency alert on their phone. Now here's the geopolitical layer that explains why this war is almost impossible to stop through normal diplomacy. Trump's approval rating in America is currently at an all-time low. Somewhere between 85 and 90% of the American public, across party lines, is unhappy with his handling of this conflict. Billionaires who funded his campaign are writing open letters asking who gave him the right to drag the world into this. The domestic political pressure to de-escalate is real and growing. But here's Trump's problem. De-escalating means admitting the strategy failed. It means acknowledging that Iran, the country America has sanctioned into poverty for decades, just forced a U.S. carrier to retreat. It means accepting that $20 billion in naval hardware and 5,000 of America's finest couldn't hold their position against Iranian missiles. That's not a story any American president can easily tell, especially not this one. So instead of de-escalating, the instinct is to escalate further, find a bigger threat to make, find a harder target to hit, find a way to make Iran look like it lost even when it didn't. And that instinct, in this specific situation, with these specific weapons in play, is how you stumble into a catastrophe that nobody actually wanted. Iran has already shown restraint multiple times. They warned before striking. They aimed at hardware, not mass casualties. They've left off-ramps available at every stage. But every off-ramp requires one thing America hasn't been willing to provide. Iran made an offer, a public, specific, unconditional offer, and it's sitting on the table right now, completely ignored by Western media. Remove American military bases from the Middle East, pull U.S. troops out of the region, give them 10 days to pack up and leave. And Iran says, officially, every attack stops immediately. The missiles stop, the drones stop, the Gulf goes quiet. The Strait of Hormuz opens, ships move, oil flows. Workers sleep through the night without an alert buzzing their phones at 2 a.m. 10 days. That's the offer. Now you might think this sounds unreasonable. You might think America can't just walk away from military infrastructure. It's spent decades and trillions of dollars building across the Gulf. And from a pure geopolitical optics standpoint, you're right. It would look like a retreat. It would look like Iran won. But here's the question nobody is asking. Compared to what alternative? Because the alternative, the path America is currently on, looks like this. More carrier groups sent into range of hypersonic missiles they can't intercept. More billions spent on interceptors that cost 50 times more than the drones they're destroying. More Gulf states getting hit. More workers evacuated. More flights canceled. More oil price spikes feeding inflation in every country on Earth. More pressure from Israel toward options so extreme that every military strategist with a security clearance is losing sleep. And potentially, if one miscalculation happens, if one hypersonic missile hits the wrong target on the wrong day, a conflict that escalates into something that makes everything we've discussed so far look minor. There is a version of the next 90 days where 5,000 American soldiers die in one afternoon, where the oil price triples overnight, where stock markets don't just drop, they close. Where governments that have never considered emergency economic measures start printing them. Where the global food supply chain, which runs on oil and dollar-denominated trade, fractures in ways that create shortages in countries that have nothing to do with this conflict. This isn't fear-mongering. This is the logical endpoint of the current trajectory, run forward at the speed the escalation has been moving. Iran knows it. America's own generals know it. The Gulf states absolutely know it, which is why Qatar's prime minister was on the phone with Tehran the moment those bombers turned around. Which is why Saudi Arabia is watching its oil refineries and saying nothing publicly while scrambling privately. Which is why every Gulf government is now having the conversation they never expected to have. Is American protection actually making us less safe? That question, once asked, doesn't go away. And here's the historical reality that makes this moment genuinely unique in modern history. Every previous Middle East crisis had an off-ramp that America could take without looking like it lost. The 1991 Gulf War ended with Saddam still in power, but Kuwait liberated. Both sides could claim something. The 2003 Iraq War had mission accomplished as cover, even as it collapsed into chaos. Every confrontation with Iran before this one was managed through proxies, sanctions, and threats, tools that preserved American prestige even when they failed. This time is different, because Iran didn't just resist. Iran made a U.S. carrier retreat, on camera, in front of the entire world. The prestige cost of backing down is higher than it's ever been, and the cost of not backing down is potentially catastrophic. That's the trap. And there's only one honest way to name it. America overextended. The Middle East policy of the last 4 decades, built on forward military bases, petrodollar dominance, and the assumption that American firepower could deter any regional actor, has hit a technological and financial wall. Iran cracked that wall, not by becoming America's equal militarily, by becoming good enough, precise enough, and cheap enough to make the cost of American presence higher than the benefit. This is exactly how great power overextensions end throughout history, not with a single decisive defeat, with a slow, grinding, economically brutal recognition that the position can no longer be held. Britain learned this after World War II. The Soviet Union learned it in Afghanistan. America learned it in Vietnam, then forgot, then learned it again in Afghanistan. And now the bill for the Middle East chapter is arriving. The question isn't whether America eventually leaves. History says it does. The question is how much damage happens before that exit. How many people die? How many economies collapse? How many ordinary workers in Dubai and Doha and Bahrain spend their nights terrified before the people with the power to stop it finally decide the price is too high? Iran fired a warning shot at a $20 billion carrier. The carrier ran. The rest of the world watched. And somewhere in a situation room in Washington right now, the smartest people in the room are looking at their options and realizing something deeply uncomfortable. The warning shot was the easy part.